Hey guys, it's Wanda from Crazy Days, and today I wanted another conversation of friends. I started this last year and kind of got sidetracked a little bit because of all the things that Danny and I were doing here at Deepsouth. And really, we've not had a lot of visitors that stay long enough for me to sit them down on the porch and just have a conversation. We get to talking and time gets away from us. It's time for them to leave. And we hadn't done any videos. I used to not let that happen. I used to always got videos going with visitors, but Zoom's made it possible that I can visit with my friends long distance. So today we've got B from Life Done Free. So, hey B, how are you?
Hi, doing great.
Well, today B and I decided we're just going to get to know each other through Zoom, and we're taking you along on that journey. So B, you want to tell them a little bit about how you grew up, what's going on with you a little now, or just get started telling who you are.
Well, my name is Bethany, but I go by B. I'll answer to either, actually. I'm a city girl, really. I grew up in Phoenix, Arizona. And my dad was in and out of my life as a child. And my parents actually remarried when I was 12 and moved us to the Midwest. And that was quite a culture shock for me there, going from Phoenix to Nebraska. Actually, it was a town of 190 people. So I went from a class of over 1,000 to a class of 2. It was a one-room schoolhouse, and it was quite a shock. Then my dad, he gardened, he hunted for rabbits. We ate rabbits, and we raised a couple piglings. They told us that they were our pets, and then we loved them so much, and then we ate them. So that I actually rebelled quite a bit growing up because I didn't want to eat our pets, and I wanted to live a city girl life. And then I met my husband and realized that life that my parents were providing us was exactly where I wanted to be. That the garden and growing my food and knowing where it came from and preserving it, as an adult, it makes more sense.
Yeah. Isn't it amazing though, as a kid, you want to rebel against so much that you think mom and dad are so against everything. And when you get older, you look back and you go, oh, they really did kind of know what they were talking about. I wished I'd have listened a little more.
Yeah, a lot more. Growing a garden, I would know. So I think I could do such a better job if I just listened to my father growing up, because picking the food and planting them were chores back then. And now that it's rewarding, now I'm like, look what I have created.
I know, isn't it fun? I go out into the greenhouse and I find something, and I'm coming out going, Danny's riding by on the Ranger, and I'm holding up a huge strawberry yesterday, and all he can see is this big red thing in my hand, and he assumes it's a strawberry, and he's just smiling and waving and keeps going. Back when we were kids, if mom says, hey, there's a strawberry patch out there, you need to pick it today, you're going to go, no, I don't want to do that, and you gotta, it's one of those things. But I'm amazed at the stuff I grow, and I'm proud of it. And where other people are throwing Instagrams of meals they ate in restaurants and things like that, mine is my vegetables and stuff like that that's growing around here. Sometimes I think I'm a little overboard with some of it, but I love showing what we just harvested.
Yeah, I was watching one of your videos the other day, and you about a rat in the greenhouse. And you were showing your plants, and I said, oh wait, what was that? Was that a peppercorn plant? Can I grow peppercorns here? I I need to get into that.
Isn't that amazing? I mean, I
I
had a lady
I
send
never
me
knew you could do
those.
that.
Yeah, I didn't know I could either. I had a lady send me 2 plants and I planted them, and then they put on roots, and I took 2 of the roots, and I've got 4 plants now. And the way it looks, I may have a few more that I can take off. I'm just not worried about it yet, but this summer I'm hoping to, because I've had so many people say, I didn't know you could do that. And I'm like, me either. It is a tropical plant, but if you have a greenhouse and you protect it really well during the winter, or have a way to dig up the base and take it in during the winter to keep it warm, because it will freeze back if you have freezing temps for more than 3 or 4 days. You know, that's where a greenhouse is good in some ways and bad in others, because here, our greenhouse, I didn't want one. I'm gonna just be honest. I did not want a greenhouse. And Danny kept saying, we need a greenhouse, we need a greenhouse. And I said, Danny, we're in the deep South. We can plant anything outside almost, you know, all year long. Why do we need a greenhouse? And he just kept on. And I said, okay, you get your greenhouse and you do whatever you want to do. I don't want to hear about it. And so I helped him put it up. I mean, I know you and Tag did this too. Y'all did a lot of couples had to do what you got to do things. We have videos of us putting that greenhouse up step by step, and me up on there trying to help him with stuff. It's crazy. And he started putting stuff in there, and it was like it was on steroids. And I'm like, yes, okay, this is the way to grow. And I was really excited about it. But then I told him, I said, look, why don't you just deal with this? He says, no, I want a second one. I said, well, the only way we get in a second one is if it's mine and I get to do whatever I want in there. So the deal was, we only got a second greenhouse if it belonged to me. He goes in there and plants stuff. Don't get me wrong. He has to snitch stuff in there. But basically it's my queendom, and I plant whatever I want. So when people send me stuff, I'm always experimenting. And I've planted cotton and grown cotton and harvested a couple of bowls of cotton this year. I planted popcorn last year and harvested popcorn. That's just some of the odd things that I do. I love doing things that most people don't do in their greenhouse. So, you know, but back to you. Now, do you have a greenhouse?
I do have a greenhouse. We are just starting to grow in it. I just got the roofing done this last week. So I already have plants in there, and I've caught a mouse in there already. I don't know how it got in.
Well, I've learned with the greenhouse that you get insects, you get bugs, you get disease, just like you do outside. You know, it's just that you got to learn how to control it. And it is difficult with some bugs to really control, but mice, I leave my greenhouse doors open during the day. So yeah, they can get in, and our side beds are ground level, so they can bury up through the ground and come in. Even though we have ground cover down in the middles, the side beds, they can come up from the ground. So it's ground level. So I did see you up on the greenhouse the other day. Tag says you were lollygagging around, you know, all that lollygagging.
I didn't know he was recording me.
Yeah. So how long have y'all been married?
We got married in 2011. We've been together for 16 years, I think. And we dated for 8. Whoa. And then we decided we were going to go ahead and just get married.
And so do y'all have children? Some?
We have one together. We have one daughter together, and then I have 2 stepsons that we've been together for so long. I claim them as my own. Yeah, you have to. Have you ever worked outside the home, or you always been a homemaker, you know, from the time you were a teenager coming to now? What kind of, give them a little background, I guess, on who Bethany is. Well, I was a nursing assistant, and I put myself through massage school as a nursing assistant. So I went through massage school in Nebraska, which is one of the higher regulated states for massage therapy. I did that for 15 years. And then I met my husband and we moved to Kansas. And Kansas is not a regulated state for massage therapy. So I continued to be a massage therapist here in Kansas for several years. I retired massage therapy to be a stay-at-home mom. At that point in time, we had the two boys and they were in their teenage years. But then I decided that arthritis from doing massage so long, and then got into gardening, stayed home and grew 106 tomato plants. The first year, that was a lot. We made lots of salsa that first year. And then my stepchildren, our boys, their grandfather was a German, and he taught our youngest son how to make sauerkraut. So I then got into making sauerkraut with our middle child, and he really liked that, like stepping in the crock with the sauerkraut, with the salt and the cabbage.
Oh, wow.
That's how they said they did it.
Like I said, I've got cabbages out there about this big right now, 3 of them. Danny's growing in his high tunnel, and I'm just so anxious. But now I don't like sauerkraut. Well, I guess I can't say that. I don't know that I've ever done sauerkraut before. And people say, why not? And I'm like, I didn't grow up with that. You know, we just made slaw and we cooked cabbage and stuff like that. And cabbage rolls are good, that sort of thing. But I wasn't sure about maybe fermenting. So I don't know. I hadn't tried that yet. So what kind of ways do you can? Oh, I got to show them. Look at this, guys. I don't know where I'm at. I went in there before and I chose this shirt because I thought, you know, we're going to be talking about canning and stuff like that. And I get here and B's got on the same shirt and we just both went to laugh. Great minds. But we do a lot of canning here, and I do freeze dry some. I freeze some. I dehydrate very little. I'm not a fan of dehydrated foods. And I do a lot of vacuum sealing and things like that. But what all do you do as far as food preservation there? Because I know you're the main one that does that. You are the gardener, more or less.
Yeah, I am the gardener. We do dehydrating, we do freezing, we do canning. My husband made a processing kitchen to get the smell of some of the things out of the house. He's not a fan of the rendering beef, lard, and tallow and in the kitchen. It smells. Dehydrating onions is another thing that smells real bad. So Tag made a processing kitchen for me so that I can do the rendering over there. Plus, you know, when we do honey, that's a more than 1 day job. So it's easier to have a processing kitchen to do some of those things in. We try to eat most of the things fresh, but that's not possible. We've gone to also storing our food in seed form and on the hoof.
Yep.
Because there's only so much closet space you have.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of people think that way anymore. And I think that's a wonderful way to think of it, because Danny and I do that too. As long as it's on hoof, we don't have it in a bag or a jar or a freezer or whatever, and I don't have to deal with it. He has to feed it, but you know, as long as it's on hoof or the chickens are in the pen, you know, we're good. But once you kill it, and you have to do something with it. And so we're in the process now. We have 1 pig that's fixing to go to the processor. Then we have 2 small cows we're taking to the processor. And I have a dozen chickens that most of them are fixing to be processed. So we're going to be in the meat production for a while. And I plan on canning a lot, making broth, stuff like that, because I like the quickness of canning, opening a jar, adding some rice, and you're done in a few minutes and you got a nice meal. And so how do you, I mean, you said you like it in seed form too. That's great because we have seeds galore. We keep a lot of seeds. So how do you plan on eating season to season typically?
Basically, the process, the canning and dehydrating, using the stuff that when it is in abundance to, like you said, can it, and then it's on the shelf all winter long. That's my goal this year, is to process enough food that we can last all winter long. That, being being off grid and self-sufficient, the food sufficiency is the hardest part, I think. Trying to not go to the store, that means you're milking your cow and you're making your own cheese. That's something I cannot get cheese right. I mean, it's edible, but it does not taste like store cheese. I cannot get that right.
I've tried cheese once. I had a lady come here and make some, I think she made some soft cheese, and the soft cheese was amazing because I like the soft cheese where you can just dip in or whatever, or pour in and add to stuff. I've never tried the the harder cheddar or anything like that. I have all the processing stuff here, but we had milk goats and I wanted to do the milk goats, but then Danny got into projects and I couldn't deal with goats and help him with projects. So we ended up getting rid, and plus goats are babies, you gotta baby them things. They want you to play with them, and we just didn't have time. So we got out of the goats. We have the cows. We have several of them that can be milked, but right now we're not milking cows yet. Danny's got them where we can, because we don't do a lot of dairy at all. And we've cut ourselves back on butter, cheese, and milk to the point that it's almost non-existent in our diet. We do use some, but not the gobs that we used before, if that makes sense. And I do believe that's one way that we have learned, is to cut back things that you can cut back on. I mean, in cooking, a lot of people tell me I can't cook without butter. I can't cook without cheese. You can, and you can learn to like it. It may taste a little bit different, but it's not a big game changer for us. So have you learned to cook differently since you don't go to the grocery store all the time?
Yeah. Yes. The cooking different here. My main thing is cooking on the wood stove. I think I've got it. And then I look at my food and I'm like, well, what did I do wrong? Sometimes the stove, I feel like the stove is hot, but it's more in a dehydration mode. And so I put something in there and it looks okay, but you go to break it open and it's like rubber inside, because I basically cooked it for an hour on 100 degrees instead of 300 degrees for 20 minutes.
I get you, because we've experienced with our wood stove a little bit, and Danny can cook breakfast. I mean, he's done the eggs, the oatmeal, the grits, and cooked bacon and stuff like that. We baked bread on top of my wood stove one time, and that was really amazing, because I was like, I don't know. I said, don't you ruin my bread. I was really, really worried about it. But we do have a video on that. We actually cook bread on it. But my stove, mine is just like a wood heater type thing that has a place you can cook on. You have one of those nice, I don't know what you call it, but it's a nice wood stove. I love it. Danny loves your stove.
We call it a wood cook stove. It just has, it's a kitchen queen. So it has an actual oven and it has a thermostat. But when I contacted the company, they said that the thermostat's on the front of the oven where the door is. And it has like like a meat thermometer, has a stick on it, and it's only just a couple inches long. So what's in the back of the of the oven is a lot hotter than what's at the front of the oven because it has a glass door. So it does take time just getting used to it. Last night I made chili for dinner with cornbread, and when you can smell the food that's in the oven, it is done. You get in there and get it out because it is done.
You don't want to overdone it. That's the way Danny is. When I put his sweet potato dessert in the oven, I usually set a timer so I don't forget, because I'm bad to get sidetracked now. I used to never set a timer. Now I set timers. And I went to do something last night. Oh, I went to take a shower, and I had his sweet potato dessert in there. And after a while, I come back and I said, did you get that out of the oven? And he said, yeah, the beeper just kept going off and kept going off and kept going off. And I said, that usually means you need to get up and get it out of the oven, you know? And he said, well, I finally did. Oh my gosh. So do you find cooking off grid has to be it is a learning curve. If you don't know cooking basics, then like you said, cooking at 100 for an hour does not give you what you do 20 minutes at 300 or 350. So you're learning a lot with this cooking off grid, right?
And we're learning to eat things that don't necessarily taste the way they're supposed to either.
Not wasting food.
Yeah. Well, and I learned too that the woods, you know, putting white wood, smaller pieces in the stove, that heats it up pretty fast. The larger logs don't get it hot fast. So learning the different types of woods and the sizes of woods, things that as a city girl, you don't pay no mind to, but now I have to see, like, is this one the wood that I want? No, I'm looking for white wood, or I'm looking for, you know, an overnight log, or I'm looking for something to start the fire, or to, you know, it is learning and management. That's managing so much more now.
You know, when you were a teenager, if you were like me, all you wanted to do was have a boyfriend, have a car, have a job, enjoy life, and everything's going to be hunky-dory from now on. Did you ever think that you would be living off grid with no electricity, no running water? I'm sure you have water inside, but not municipality stuff. And you have power because you guys have solar. I know that. But you don't have the luxury of when you turn on a light, that you always know, if you and Tag don't monitor that solar on a regular basis, you are not going to have any power. You're not going to be, you're going to be back to candle state.
Absolutely. And, you know, we've only been here since July at living off grid. So things that were in my mind, I know, you know, about headlamps, but it wasn't until I watched your video again, because I watched it before, but then after we were living off grid, I watched your video about the lights. I think it was different lights you were showing. And I thought, why am I not using a headlamp? That's the smartest thing ever. You know,
well, once we started going over to the cabin, a lot of people said, why did you put a cabin on your property? Well, number one, it was difficult to find land somewhere that we liked. I guess we're picky sometimes, and people say, yeah, you're too picky, but we knew what we wanted in land, and we just hadn't found it yet. So we're still here. And we thought, you know, if we're going to be here, we're going to make the provisions we want to enjoy life. And we wanted to learn off grid. When Danny and I first started YouTube, I would laugh at anybody that was off grid, because I would say, Danny, why are these people off grid? I said, this don't make sense. I said, back when I was growing up, if you had no electricity and no running water, it meant you were poor or you were a drug addict. And that was my mentality. And these people were doing all these off-grid videos, and I'm going, y'all got to be the craziest people I ever seen, you know, here in the deep South. When it gets hot in the summer, it gets hot. And I'm like, we got to have air conditioning and stuff. And when he started talking about an off-grid cabin, I'm like, I don't know about this, you know. And we did suffer a lot over there by going during the hottest. We went one night was over 100 degrees that day. So it hadn't cooled off much that night. And all we had was the little power stations and a fan about this size. And the power station we had at that time only lasted about 3 hours on high. And after 3 hours, it was just, that was it. So have y'all had some like lighting, you know, is one thing, but have you learned how like air conditioning, fans? I don't know. Do you have all that with your solar setup? I know he's got a really good solar setup, so you can have most things.
We do have air conditioning now, but when we built this house, the original pod, we had left we actually built into the walls spots where we were going to put window units, you know, like that you take out in the wintertime and then you put in the summertime. We have spots for those, but then as we were here and thinking, we ended up going with the Mitsubishi split systems that do the air conditioner and heater. They actually dehydrate. They have a dehydrator mode where it sucks the moisture out of the air even. We do have those now. We did not in July when we moved here, and it was hot, especially on level 2. And then level 3 was just, you don't want to go up there in the daytime. But the way Tag built these buildings, he overbuilds. So we have the, you know, instead of 2x4 walls, we have 2x6 walls. And then we have the most insulation. And so there were times in this July where it was hotter than, you know, heck. We had people coming in and they're like, oh, you guys got air conditioning. And it's like, no, we don't have air conditioning. This is what it is inside because of the insulation and the way he built it. So that helps keep the cool in the summertime, helps us to stay warm in the wintertime. And then it has thermomass, the tubes that run into the ground underneath the ground, and then long tubes that pull air into the house. And there's a whole circulation. I'm not smart like that. There's a whole circulation system that are buried with pipes. And I just know that it feels nicer in here in the summertime.
Yeah, that's kind of how we were with the cabin. The way Danny built the cabin, we can go in there even in the summer and it's not that bad. When we stayed in there that it was 100 degrees was when it wasn't finished. There was no flooring, there was no cabinets, there were nothing on the walls. It was simply the outer walls. We were on an air mattress. And let me tell you, when it's cold, air mattresses are not the way to go. When it's hot, they're still not the way to go. So he finally built a bed, so we had everything. But, you know, we were doing it little by little and we're still not finished with it. But now you can go over there, like people go over and when they walk in, they go, wow, it feels like an air conditioner's on in here. And I said, no, it's been shut up for days. We hadn't been over here for 3 days. And this is just the temperature in here. And it really is a lot cooler than it is outside usually. And this house that we're in now, the big house, when it gets hot and you leave the air conditioning off, it's hot in here, it's stuffy in here. The floors are wood floors, want to buckle. I mean, it is horrible if you don't have continued air conditioning going in this house, because he didn't plan for this house to not have air conditioning, you know? Off-grid was not in our vocabulary, right. And it wasn't in his when he built this house. All right, so I know on your homestead, you and Tag are like Danny and I, y'all work together sometimes doing things, and you have to, but there's also times you have separate roles. So what are some of the things that you do together when you have to? And what are some of the things that you look at Tag and you go, get out of my hair, go away, let me handle this?
That's the kitchen and the garden. Tag doesn't need to be in the kitchen, and he doesn't need to be in the garden unless there's something that needs to be built.
Mm-hmm.
Then he's in there. We do work together quite a bit, but we do have different roles. He has the role of daydreaming about how to make me happy. You know, I'm looking into a wapini right now. Ooh. So
don't mention
I'm
that.
trying to talk him into it.
Danny wants one so bad. Danny would say, go for it.
I need to get Danny talking to Tag about it, because I need somebody to get him a push. Tag spends a lot of his time trying to make me happy. You know, if I want a processing kitchen, he says, where can we put it? How can we do it? You know, if I want a bigger pantry, he says, where can we do it? How can I do it? You know, how can we go about it? And I don't want the details. I just want the pantry, and I just want the processing kitchen, and I just want a wapini, and I just want. And so he spends a lot of his time trying to figure out how to do it. And then he has to figure out how to get money to do it. He still works outside of the home. I mean, because somebody has to pay the taxes. I do household chores still. The laundry is still my job, and cooking, and provide planning the meals. I pay the bills and do the book work. I, try to keep the homestead bookworks. That's something new. I didn't like keeping track of how many eggs come in. I didn't know we should be doing that, but I guess that's part of management, the managing everything.
The managing is almost overwhelming, isn't it?
It is. Well, I think once there's a system for it, it's easy, but coming up with the system is trying to find how it works for you is the work. When, like with the garden, it's Tag's responsibility to go and put the infrastructure in for the garden. I mean, we work together on getting the fence up, but he gets on the skid loader and he puts the swells in. That's another thing, like swells. I said, hey babe, I want swells in the yard to keep water in. And he says, no, we don't need swells. And I said, yeah, I think we do. And he says, maybe we don't. And so I had to talk to his friends to get them on board for me to need swells. And then I got swells.
Well, one of those first big rains that puts gully washers everywhere, then he's going, maybe we need swells. Danny did that for him back. We got married in 2013. And that year and the next year, the rains were horrific. And our land is like this. Our house is sitting down from where water comes. And the water comes down, and the front yard at that time was basically dirt. It didn't have hardly any grass on it. And it just kept washing gullies all down, like where we have the high tunnels and stuff now, coming down those hills and stuff. It was a lot of erosion. And so Danny had gotten out one day. He has this big turning plow that's probably, it's huge. The turning plow is gigantic because it breaks up the pan under the garden. And he started at the house and went all the way down. And it was like, I don't remember how many feet, but it's a lot, like 100 feet or more, or 100 yards, I may say 100 yards or more down our front yard with a turning plow, and put this huge, like 3-foot ditch all the way down our yard. It was the ugliest thing you've ever seen in your life. And I said, Danny, we can't have this. And he said, well, it's the only way. It'll catch the water and it'll run it off in a different direction and it'll stop the erosion. And we weren't doing YouTube at that time. We met a neighbor that moved in, and he started talking about hugel culture. And Danny says, what is that? And he said, well, go look it up. It's a German hill mound way of growing. And so we looked it up. We took that ditch, piled all kinds of dead leaves, limbs, trees. Even when we went to his dad's and clipped all the blueberries, we brought fresh blueberry clippings and put in there. We put all kinds of stuff, and then we covered it over in dirt. So we have this big, huge mound, like you said, a swell that catches the water and diverts it, but we planted on it. And for the first 2 years, it grew well. And now, once the grass took over, we've got our fruit trees behind it. So the swell catches the water and the fruit trees are behind it, and it's feeding off all that junk underground, plus the water going in it. It's awesome. So yeah, you need swells and fruit trees and more fruit trees and more fruit trees, right?
Yeah, and a wapini.
And a wapini. So Tag still works outside the house. So you guys have an income, so to speak. Some people, that are off grid are totally trying to make it at home with no income, no nothing. And that's really, really tough, because Danny and I found that out when we married. I was still in college, and I was trying to get a degree at 50 years old. And he was working with at the time, but then something happened. He messed up his neck. He had to quit. He could not work. And then we were looking at surgery that fall, and I just told him I can't go back to school. I backed out. We became two stay-at-home people. We had to figure out what we could do. And the next year, we found YouTube, and we started with YouTube as a way to possibly pay our internet bill. We were just looking for something to do, and went from there to now we have a business. We have a whole lot of business going on. And like you, I have to do the bookkeeping and all this stuff and keep everything going. But it's been a journey. So you guys haven't quite got to that point where both of you are home 24 hours a day, but you are planning on that at some point in the future.
Yes. Tag, I used to say that he collected jobs, because he at one point in time had 9 jobs that he had to report to. Now, some of them were, sitting on a board meeting here, once every quarter, but it was still something he had to do. And it took his time. He traveled, he was in sales, he was in marketing. He's had so many hats in the time that I have known him. When he was with the video, I was forced to Homestead. The job that he had at that point in time was a great job. We had all kinds of security. And when that left, it was a shock. I mean, I was nervous. I didn't know what, at that point in time, I had been retired from massage therapy, but I thought, you know what, babe, I'll go back. My arthritis has been resting a while. But I'll do whatever I have to do to make it right. But our goal is to have him home. When we started building this place, our goal was to have him eventually retired and making rocking chairs in the wood shop, but or whatever he wanted to make. It didn't matter to me, but we do still have to pay for our taxes. So we do still have to have income at some point in time. He did go and find a way to do that. And I'm super grateful. We would eventually like our homestead to produce money, but at this point in time, it doesn't.
Yeah, and I guess that's one of the things that most people don't get is when you start homesteading, it's not necessarily making money, it is taking money to do, because infrastructure alone is you don't just move onto a property and it's all set up and you're ready to go hunky-dory. And Danny and I are still in the process, and you guys are too, of getting everything in place. And I don't know that Danny, he's like Tag now. He is a perfectionist. He goes overboard. He starts out, I can build this little something for $500. And when he gets through, we're at $10,000. And I'm like, how did this $500 project go to 10,000? You know, it's because in his mind, he sees everything that can go wrong with it. And he wants to fix it and beef it up and make sure nothing happens. And so we've been doing projects now. I've been here since 2013, which is our anniversary is coming up 9 years, I believe. And we have been on a project the whole time. We have not stopped any kind of projects because we see that there's coming a time that we can't do projects. And so if we have most everything in place, like we did the canning kitchen, and I really like having that outside and hooked up to gas because my kitchen is electric. And if the power is not on, at least I have a gas backup, you know, I have a way, and we have the gas bottles. We have the things I need here to can if I need to. We have a lot of electrical stuff that would just be junk that we just have to pitch if there's no electricity. At the cabin, we have solar, so that we're learning. The solar is a big deal to have to learn, you know, how to make it do. And we don't have the setup you guys have. We just are learning. We've just got a few panels and trying to figure out how to do it. And do you remember, I don't know if you watch Green Acres coming up, but there was an episode of Green Acres where Lisa Douglas was trying to figure out how to work the electricity, and her husband had it like, you can do 1 and 1, but you can't do a 1 and a 3. And she was trying to figure out what to plug in, when to plug it in, and not blow the whole system. And I will always remember that. And when Danny goes to talking about what we can do at the cabin, I'm going, why can't I plug this in at the cabin? And he says, no, that won't work. You can only do X amount of power over there. And I'm like, I don't get it. You know, it's over my head, but okay. So we have limited power over there because I don't get the process of how much can be plugged in or when it can be plugged in and all that kind of stuff. You know, it's going to be one of those management things that if something happens, I'm going to be figuring out what I can and can't do according to solar.
Yeah, that has been a big change for us too. We have, we have red days where if it's cloudy, you know, we can't do certain things. Running the washing machine takes too much electricity, and the iron takes too much electricity. There are even a yellow day. I wouldn't do ironing or washing machine. Those are only on green days where it's full sun. And I typically will go and I'll look at we have a smart panel inside the house so that I can see what's going on at the powerhouse, because our batteries and system is in a totally separate building, because at one point in time we were going to go with a different battery that may or may not produce some kind of chemical into the air. And so we just decided to put our system in a whole nother building so that if we decided to use those kind of batteries, that it wasn't an issue on our health. But then we ended up going with a better battery anyway. But it's still, our batteries and solar system are on a whole nother building. So we have in the house, we have it looks like a thermostat where it tells us how many amps are coming in over what we're using, and then what we're using wattage wise. And so I look at that, I'm not kidding you, I look at that probably 100 times a day to see, you know, I'll go and look at it, and then I'll come back and I'll plug the coffee pot in, and then I'll go and look at it and I'll say, okay, that one is using this amount of power, go and unplug it. You know, the microwave was only this amount of power. And I actually got a microwave that you could determine how much, you know, if it's 400 watts or 300 watts or 1600 watts, just by pressing a button to tell, you know, how much watts you want to use on it. I'm so grateful to have electricity where I could just turn it on, but it is a management issue. we've only ran out of electricity once. We had to reset the breaker. And now I know that if it's not charging, go look at the breakers. But it's nice when there's a storm going on and the towns around us have no power, but we still have power because we are our own powerhouse. We are our own electrical company. So, and it is all management.
Well, that's funny because I'm sitting here going, you know how most people are checking their phones all day long and they're constantly looking for those emails. You're going and looking at your solar panel thing to tell you, and you do nothing. I mean, you have to unplug or turn off every single item in your house, or you have draws going through that you don't need. And so you are
right.
The management of what is going on at your house is phenomenal. If you worked outside of the home and Tag worked outside of the home, can you even imagine doing what you're doing and trying to do the things to be self-sustainable, but yet still hold a job and come in every day? Can you even imagine that?
I think it could be done. I mean, for those who want to homestead, who both have, husband and wife both have jobs, it can be done. It can be, but when you spend your time on your, like me, the electrical system, something else the time is being taken away from. Mm-hmm. So you have to manage it somehow, somewhere. You only have so many minutes in the day.
We have the animals and we have gardens and we have the high tunnels, and then I have Etsy, and like I said, all our businesses I have to deal with all day long. I am bouncing back and forth between, just like when we started, I'm going, hold on, give me a minute. I got to go get the cookies, before I start, because I'm bouncing between taking care of the chickens. I've got to make, that has to be done. You don't forget your animals. So that has to be done. Cooking, cleaning has to be done. That's something that we got to eat too. And everything else has to work in between those things. You have to know when you can cook and when you cannot cook. I still have to manage like you do, only I do have electricity here. That's one thing I don't have to look at, but I have to think when my Etsy has to go out, and I have to see how many orders I have and how long it's going to take me to pack them and things like that. And then I don't want to start that if it's almost lunchtime. I have to go do lunch and then do Etsy afterward, or things like that. And I have to schedule my meetings. A lot of people say, how come you don't do more conversation with friends? And I'm like, Danny and I've been building a barn. He needs my help 90% of the time on the barn. And I got to cook and clean and take care of animals in between and keep a greenhouse reasonable. And there's no time to do what you and I are doing because I don't have time. Plus our internet's horrible. And if it's rainy or really cloudy, we can't do anything. So when we schedule things, we try to schedule it on days it's not raining. And so there again is another scheduling problem, and then days that we do have to go to town. We don't live that far from our town, but we don't go in all the time. We stay away from town as much as possible. And we write down what we need to do. And when we head to town, we got a list. And if it ain't on the list, Danny goes, if it ain't on the list, we ain't doing it. But it is a management thing. I get a lot of people ask me, how do you manage on a homestead? And it is an individual thing. If you're on it and you are up early, I don't know how early you get up, but you can talk about this a little bit in a minute. If you get up early and you get things done early, and then you manage out the rest of the day, or if you're one that likes to sleep late and then get up and midday you're going, okay, I really need to get something going, but you also have children that you have to help take care of also. So I know you're not sleeping way past 10 o'clock. I'm pretty sure of that.
No, Tag's usually up at, I mean, his phone is going off all night long. So we're up usually about 6. Even in the summertime, we, you know, if it's nice, if the sun is out, we're up. I mean, that's just how it is. We ended up going to a homesteading journal. One of the homesteading, and I can look it up, but one of the homesteading conferences, they have a journal, and one of our friends had one and I liked it. And so I ordered one. I'm using it. This is the first time, but it has on there for like a monthly calendar, and then it goes into a weekly calendar, and then it goes into a daily calendar. And then it even goes into like a habit calendar where it's like, you know, every time, you know, like if you want to drink more water, you go and you put a little tally mark in this book to encourage you to do the, you know, chores or, you know, your, whatever you're trying to get done. Well, we would take the monthly one. It's the same book, but we would open it up to the month, and I would go through on my internet, we would go through the weather. And so like the sunny days, I would put like a sun on those on the calendar for, you know, that next week. And I'm like, okay, these are laundry days that I can iron and do laundry, because I have a regular washing machine. You know, I don't have the, you know, manual like Stacy does. I don't, you know, I want to put the washing machine, I want to put the load in the washing machine and walk away from it and come back and it's already washed and wrung out. And I can take it from there. And right now I line dry, but I am getting a gas dryer supposed to be delivered. Apparently everything's on back order. So I do have a propane dryer coming, but I right now I just line dry everything, and I don't mind it. You know, I'm happy to have clean clothes.
The washer is one thing. When Katrina came through in my previous marriage, when Katrina came through, I forgot what year it was. Anyway, 2005, I think, or something like that. We were without power for a while, and we had the generator, so that we hooked well, we had 2 generators. Let me put it that way. We hooked one to a well that my daughter had, and we hooked one to the washing machine that we took out of the house and went and sat by her well, because we had trees down everywhere, and it looked horrible because it looked like a tornado had blown somebody's laundry through the trees. We had laundry laying on limbs everywhere, but the one thing we couldn't do, or we could have, but we just didn't like, was trying to wash and wring those clothes out. So we took the regular washer and hooked it up right by the well and ran both of them. And we had days when we washed. You know, we didn't run it all the time, but we had times when we washed. And I was so thankful. I don't mind line drying. I'll line dry all day long if I have a washing machine that works. You learn what you like and what you don't like, you know? And I guess that was one of the things I want to bring out before we get off is, on your homestead, what have you learned that things that in past experiences as opposed to now, things that on the homestead you really don't like to do, but you do because you're the one that has to do it. And is there anything that you really, really miss sometimes and you go, but it ain't worth it?
Firewood? That's one of my jobs, is to haul and stack firewood. And I try to play Tetris and make it fun, but it is a chore. And it is it's a chore. You know, growing up, we had a house that was over 100 years old when my parents got remarried. So cutting wood and hauling wood was part of our job as growing up. But Now I do it weekly. If I want in the wintertime, if I want hot food and I want a warm house and I want my clothes dry, I gotta haul wood.
That's the one that you just like, if I had a young person here that could haul wood all day long. See, that's where I miss my kids. My kids are, I have 5. I had 2 girls and 3 boys. And when my kids were young, things like that were things that they did. We had a wood heater at one time and they had to help bring in things. And when we had a garden, I would pick, but I would make them tote the buckets back to the house because my garden was away from my house. And that's where child labor came in really, really well at that time. And so now I look at Danny and I'm going, you know, it'd be nice to have a couple of teenage boys right about now and one teenage girl that could housekeep and stuff like that. I said, but you just can't depend on them, you know? They're not really dependable creatures when they're teenagers. I know that. And you might get them to do it and you might not. Where you and I are older and we've learned that if we don't do it, it might not get done. Now, if you don't bring it in and Tag comes in, he might go get your wood. But for the most part, it's your responsibility. If you plan on eating and having warmth, you're the keeper of the, I don't know what they used to call it, but a keeper of the fire, I guess. Yeah, the keeper of the fire. You know, back in the day, they did have somebody that had to see that that fire was going 24 hours a day. And, you know, we don't have that here because we hardly ever keep a fire going 24 hours a day. It just gets too hot. I started a video a few years ago when we were with our wood heater, and I got up that morning, it was cold, and he had a wood heater. He had it all going and everything. And I said, I'm going to do a video and I'm going to cook soup or something. I can't remember what I was cooking on it. And I said, I'm going to show the process all day of me cooking on this wood heater. And so I started videoing and showing what all was going on that morning. And I mean, here it is. After a while, I had the doors open, the windows open. I was in a tank top and shorts, and I was trying to finish the video. And I'm like, guys, it just turned like 80 degrees outside from like 40 this morning. And I wasn't expecting it. I wasn't thinking. And here I had half my food done on a wood stove. And I was having to continue on so I could finish the video. And I was just like, this is crazy. I mean, here in South Mississippi, sometimes it don't pay to try and cook on a wood stove, you know. I have multiple ways to cook other than wood stove.
In the summertime, we don't cook in the house. Yeah. I have a back porch and I carry my devices in and out if I'm going to use a device, or I just grill. That's one thing I noticed that, you know, like those Instapots, you know, the Instapot. Mm-hmm. Have you heard of an Instapot? So when on a solar system, those things it's like 1,700 watts to get it up to pressure. But once the pressure is there, it kicks way back down. It doesn't even use power very much.
I got a lot of cast iron. I just, you know, we collect cast iron like crazy. Yep. And that's a learning curve in itself to learn how to cook on it. But we have rocket stoves and things like that. And like I said, we have gas. I have 2 or 3 gas stoves in different places that I can use. And I've learned to use those outside. You know, we have a cowboy grill where we can grill outside, cook most anything out there. And those are things that, you know, we like around here so that we don't have to necessarily use electricity all the time. So it's been great talking to you. And is there anything you would say to the viewers out there that are just getting started, or even the ones that have been doing it for a long time? You got any advice on what to do, or just some encouragement?
I would say take one step at a time and don't look back. And the word next. When things don't go the way you want it to go, don't dwell on it. Just get over it and go to the next thing. Because, you know, you can spend a lot of time thinking about something, thinking about how you're going to build your house, thinking about what animals you want, thinking about this or that. I think you just go. You know, when I got chickens, I didn't know how to tend a chicken. I didn't know anything about chickens. But now that I have chickens, I have to learn about them. You know, that just like growing the garden, my first garden, I really didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know how many tomatoes would come out of 100 plants. It's a lot. Just keep going, take us one step at a time. You got to start somewhere. And next, the timing right now, and you're learning your solar, this is the time to do it, because you don't want to learn your solar when you need it. Now, when you have electricity and you have another homestead or another dwelling, now's the time to plug that crock pot in, plug and put the soup in there and wear the tank top in the summertime, sweating yourself off. And, just do it now. Don't wait till tomorrow.
Well, that's great, because that's one thing that I think I tell people too. You don't want to wait till it's a crisis situation to learn, because like you said, cooking off grid it's not easy. Our grandmothers knew how, because they had to do that every day, and their mamas taught them. But we don't have mamas that cooked on a cast iron stove to tell us what to do anymore. And we don't have people telling us how to garden exactly. We have YouTube videos, and I can watch you and you can watch me, but until you get out in the garden and you actually plant that plant and you watch it grow and you nurture it, and then it dies on you and you go, oh my goodness, what did I do? You start over. So you learn what works, what doesn't work, how many things work, how many things don't. And like you said, don't spaz over it. If it doesn't work, move on. Because just like with jobs and everything else, if you sit and dwell because you say, I wish I had done something different, maybe if I'd done something different, you can what if all day long. It doesn't benefit you at all. Move on. Next. That's what I like. Next.
Yep.
And put all your effort into next.
That's another thing too. You had mentioned cast iron. Like my dad growing up used a cast iron stove or a cast iron pan. And then when he was done cooking on it, it would go in the oven. And then the next meal he would pull it out and cook on it again and then put it back in the oven. And I'm like, that is the grossest thing I've ever seen. Well, now I'm cooking with cast iron, and you don't wash it. If you wash it every time, you got to season it every time.
Well, I've enjoyed having you on today. Yeah. And B, you and Tag enjoy the day. We're going to be getting to know you guys better. Danny and I hope to do some conversations and talks and stuff throughout the year. And, it's amazing. No matter where you live, no matter what you're doing, every homestead is different. And every woman or man that is on that homestead is different. So everything is a factor into how your homestead will work, how it will function. And you guys seem to have worked that out pretty good. You know who's doing what and when. And if it doesn't work, y'all figure it out and y'all work at it to make it work, don't you?
Yep. And then next, everything else.
Next, everything else. So I want to thank you for coming on today. And if anybody wants to check you out, you have the YouTube channel, Life Done Free, and it's no spaces, right? And Life Done and Free is capital letters. And I'm going to try and put that in the description and in the information cards. Can they find you anywhere else, or do you have anything else going on social media?
We have a Facebook page, Life Done Free.
I think that's where we found you first. Tag had told Danny about his Facebook page. And so we went over and had to kind of snoop a little bit. Y'all have a wonderful community there. Tag is introducing us a little bit to all the people in your community. And that's something that Danny and I envy, is community. Because Thank you for joining me. And guys, y'all check out Life Done Free.
Thank you.